Hey Rick, thanks for joining me, man, today on K9 Legends and Trailblazers. It's an honor to have you. You are the first law enforcement handler, trainer, master trainer that I've had. Everybody else prior has been military. This channel was really created to honor the two-legged heroes. We do a really good job of honoring our four-legged heroes, as we should, and I say that every podcast, every show. Um, but those dogs are great and amazing because of the handlers, the trainers, the supervisors that put the work into them as well,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So I really just want to try to give back to the K9 community in that sense, and just people that have been influential over my career, and you definitely were influential over my career, whether you know it or not. But we'll get to that timeline where we met. But where I'd like to start, Rick, is 1979, and you are dating yourself just a little bit. It's okay. I was in
Now
pre-K.
you go tell everybody how old I am.
It's okay, brother. I love you anyway. But 1979, start talking to me about, I'm sorry, Jeffersonville PD.
Well, 1979, I was hired by Jeffersonville PD. I started on the parking meter division, actually, where almost all sworn officers would start. And then as soon as a sworn officer position came open, they would pull from the parking meter division. So
Right.
1979, January, I hired in. I was actually in construction and was laid off because of a big snowstorm that hit the area I was living in, southern Indiana and northern Kentucky.
Right.
And I was laid off and was given the opportunity to join the police department. And in that year, 79, our police chief had the great idea and ambition that, hey, I want to start the K9 division. So in October of 79, we started our first K9 division. We were actually, I think, the first K9 division south of Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
At that time, Indianapolis had a big K9 unit in Marion County, but I think we were the first one south of them that actually had a K9 unit. And so, of course, I started helping out in 79 as a helper. I was that gopher guy,
Right.
go for this, go for that, do this, do that. And I'll come out to train with them as often as I could. And in 1980, I was sworn, hard as a sworn officer. And, I always said, hey, if you ever get an opening, I'd love to be in K9. Well, I still continue to come out and train on a regular basis. And then in 1982, I had my opportunity. It was unfortunate how I got it. Uh, there was a officer involved train wreck. He was on the way to a serious flight call at a big function,
Yeah.
and the train that came across track didn't light up the track, didn't throw any flares out, just pulled out in the dark, and he ran right into the train. Well, he was in K9,
Wow.
injured himself, injured the dog. Dog could no longer be usable, so they needed a new K9 handler, and I put him forward. And of course, I was chosen for that position. And starting next year, January, I'll have my 47th year starting in K9. So that's where it all started.
That's amazing, man. And that's a long career, 79 to 2009, in any department, in any function, but to be K9 that entirety is just amazing. Now, Rick, back we'll just say early 80s, like what was the priority for dogs back then? Like what types of dogs were you
Well,
work?
our first two dogs were actually Rottweilers.
Yeah.
Ziggy and Zorba were the first two dogs. Some lady who showed Rottweilers,
Yeah.
they weren't show quality for her.
Oh, I see.
She donated the dogs to us. And so that was our first two dogs we worked with. Then we ended up getting a third dog as a shepherd. And basically, once the Rottweilers retired, we had shepherds. Of course, Malinois were just starting to scratch the surface back in the 80s, as you know. They were just being brought overseas back into America. So we didn't have a lot of them, but most of our dogs, and I will say this, my first few dogs I had were all donated dogs by the community.
Right.
We didn't buy our first dog until, man, I'm thinking, man, Joe, was probably around 1996 before our department actually uh, bought a dog. And we actually bought it from Castle Canine, and God rest Bill Castle's soul. He's a senior master trainer from Napwata, owned Castle's Canine out there in Pennsylvania. He just died yesterday.
Oh, bless it, man.
Unfortunate. He was a legend in himself. That was where our first dog came from, and that was in '96. So 14 years after being in Canine, that was the first time we'd ever bought a dog.
Right.
Everything was hand me down. So, and how do we look at dogs? We didn't have the testing criteria that we have today. We have a very good selection process. Guys have gotten really smart over the years, on selection. Look for little different things that we look for. Hey, back to my day, if that dog would bite somebody, hey, that was a dog for me.
That's
If
enough, right? Yeah.
he was meaner than hell, and
Yeah.
you couldn't get him out of the kennel, that was the dog we wanted because
Yeah.
in our mind we thought we needed that.
Yeah.
Nowadays they look for the sociability, and them dogs are light switch dogs, and we didn't have it back then.
Yeah, no, and that's probably why you're as good a trainer as you are, Rick, to be honest, because just thinking about that, taking a dog off the street out of somebody's house, kind of reminds me of World War II days, World War One days when basically dogs were being donated, even maybe some in the Vietnam era, dogs were being donated for service. And like you said, you don't have that environmental test. You don't have that test of hunt drive. The dog, does the dog bite? That's what we're wanting for. So that's
That's
definitely
exactly
a
what we
different
look
time.
for.
Yeah, yeah. And I think at that back in those days too, man, the out wasn't so much a concern, right?
Well,
For
no, we
that.
didn't. We had an out, but it wasn't one of our top priorities. Our top priority was, hey, will he bite somebody and will he hold on to somebody? And that's what we look for
Yeah,
back then.
yeah,
Times have changed considerably from the day I started in K9, helping out in 1979
right.
to what we to do today. I mean, like I said, our selection process is enhanced so much. How we have actually score sheets to score dogs and what we're looking for, and the quality of dogs coming from overseas or so much better than
Yeah,
what they were
yeah,
back in them days. Because, like I said, we were taking dogs out of the backyards. And most times it's because people couldn't handle them, or
right,
they get somebody and they didn't want them,
right.
and they call and back in them days we did. I guess you'd say we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of those smaller departments still get some of those. I was just talking to some guys over in Slidell, Louisiana, and there was one particular family that donated dogs to the police department on a regular basis, meaning that they would go out and purchase the dog for the police department. So that's wasn't like that. I'm sure you guys were getting whatever you could get to make it work. And so during that time frame, Rick, 1979 to 2009, how many dogs do you think you had during that time frame?
Me personally,
Yes, sir.
um, well, I've got them tattooed on me. I think, yeah, I actually do.
Don't
I
take
think,
your shirt off, Rick. Don't take
yeah,
your shirt
I don't
off.
want to embarrass myself in front of you. Um, I'm thinking I had maybe six.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nick, K9 Nick being my last dog that I handled until I retired him in 2003 in the summer before becoming chief.
Yeah.
He was 10 and a half years old at that point anyway, so he was getting close to being retired as it was.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking around six. I had Sarge, my very first dog, and that was in 1982. He was one that was donated from a backyard from a surrounding city.
Yeah.
Guy says, "Hey, I got this dog that has bit multiple people, and I'd like to donate him." Well, we said yes, or at least put this way, the canine commander of our unit said, "Oh yeah, we'll take him."
Yeah.
Rick needs a new dog because I had a couple dogs that had came into the program, Hans and Doberman and Lucifer Doberman, that I was going through handler classes, and both of them fell out.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't doing very well. I was like 0 for 2, 0 for 3. This guy brought this shepherd in, and we were at a picnic, FOP picnic actually, and he brought the dog in, put him in by a police car, and left the lead hanging out of the door.
Mm,
And he said, "Hey, when you get him out, make sure you grab that lead nice and taut," because he said he ain't gonna like it.
he's
Well,
gone.
he
Yeah.
wasn't lying. I
Yeah.
brought him out of the car, and he was gator rolling. So I got him back to my kennel, and I put him in. We had an indoor-outdoor kennel at the time. We didn't keep dogs at home back then. We had our own police kennel,
Right.
and then outdoor runs with a guillotine door in it.
I got you.
So my canine commander said, "Well, put that dog in that kennel." And he said, "I want you to go down to the grocery store and buy you a couple pack of hot dogs. And I want you to sit there and feed him hot dogs every day.
Right.
He's going to be your best buddy."
Yeah.
But one day it happened where he said, "Hey, Dave, today's Rick. This is the day you're getting that dog out of that kennel." I said, "Well, okay, but how are we going to do that?"
Right.
I don't think he still likes me a lot. He said,
Right.
"We're going to be in the front and you're going to be in the back."
Mhm.
And he said, "We're going to open the guillotine door and I want you to have your lead in the noose and I want you to noose him,
Yeah.
grab him like a slip lead."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, what happens if I miss?" And he said, "Well, I wouldn't."
Yeah. Don't miss.
So I'm a 24-year-old
Yeah.
young handler that hadn't even really been a true handler at all.
Right.
So I get back there and I'm running this through my mind. Okay, I got this lead like a slip. Now he's going to come through that door. He ain't going to like me.
Right.
I need to make sure I throw it over his head real quick and pull it taut so he can't get to me. I
Yeah.
already had the back door gate open.
Right.
So I said, if I can get him, then I'm just going to take him out. I had a pack of hot dogs on my side in the pouch.
Yeah.
Well, I finally told him, I finally got the nerve up, Joe, and I said, open that door.
Yep.
The guillotine door came open. He popped that head under it and he popped up and he saw me. He ran at me. It went perfect. Got him, slip leading, and we took off walking, walked up down the street. And the time I got back to the kennel, him and I were buddies.
You were
He,
out of hot dogs.
I, I had all the hot dogs, and that's what. So then my canine commander tells me, Cliff Lindsay, he says, I wouldn't have done that. I said, well, you told me you do it. He said, no, I told you that's how you were going to do it. I never
No,
said I
no.
would do that same thing. He said, man, he said, no, I don't know if I'd have done that or not. And I said, well, I guess I was too young to do
Well,
it.
yeah,
But it worked out.
we
That was
got
the kind of, but that's the kind of dogs that we got back in them days. You never knew what you're going to get until you got them.
yeah,
He ended up being a great dog, believe it or not.
yeah.
Uh, Went through my training class with him. We went through 10 weeks, came out, and my first night on the street after certifying, I got two apprehensions off the track on car break-ins.
Oh wow.
Very first night. So I kept him quite a few years, but he was older anyway. When I got him, he was probably about 5 years old anyway.
Yeah,
But I kept him. But he was like a good little dog for a backyard gimme.
yeah,
But like I said, that was my first one. And then after that, I think I had 4 or 5 more and ended up K9 Nick, and that was one we purchased from Castle K9.
yeah.
He was actually given to another handler, but then that handler only stayed in 2 years. Nick was a handful. We called him Nasty.
Yeah.
No one else wanted him. We had a guy give him a K9, but no one wanted him. No one said they could handle him. So I gave my dog up I currently had to the
Hmm.
new handler coming in, and I took Nick, took
Right.
him, and I kept him for I think for about 6 years
Yeah. Nice.
before I finally retired him. And
Right.
he had a tremendous amount of apprehensions and drug finds in his career. So he was a good dog.
So with you're familiar with how the military K9 program works.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, you promote yourself out of K9 at some point, right? Once you made chief, did your K9 involvement start to go away, or were you just a chief that said, I'm gonna stay involved in K9?
Well, basically a chief that was going to stay involved to a point.
Yeah,
I retired my dog just before getting appointed to the position of chief.
right.
And then I immediately, when I became chief, I appointed a new canine commander.
Yeah.
I would still come out and train with them when I had the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was the guy. I think the canine guys liked it. Let's put it that way. They liked the fact that their chief was a long time canine
Oh, of
handler and
course.
trainer.
Right.
Because
That comes
my
out and
mind,
gets dirty with them. Yeah.
yeah, my mindset was canine.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. Even though I was cheap, but I actually improved the unit, put more money in the budget. I actually increased our unit by two more dog teams,
Nice.
and gave them that was the first specialty pay they would ever got was when I was chief. I gave it to SWAT and Canine because at that time we had no specialty pay for specialty units.
Right.
So they ended up getting some specialty pay, and I knew the Garcia Act was in place, so I went ahead and gave
Yep.
them time for that, so we couldn't be sued. So I think they appreciated the fact that I understood all that as a chief.
Oh, I'm sure. I would have been 100%. Yeah. Yeah,
But when
that's
I came
that's
out as chief, I didn't go back in canine. They asked me if I wanted to, and at that point, I said, "No, man, that's a younger guy's game.
right.
Let's keep the young guys in there. I'll come out and help them in training anytime, and I'll still certify the dog teams when need to be.
Right.
But let the young guys come and take over." So I never went back in canine. But you're talking about sometimes promoting yourself out of that canine. I was a major shift commander with it and still carried the dog.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing, man. Lucky you, right?
Yeah,
Lucky
I
you.
was, in a lot of departments, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Once you
Right.
promote to a sergeant, and go, the sergeant's open to detectives or traffic or whatever. That's where they have to go.
Right.
But our department at that time was still small enough that you could stay in K9E if he was a shift commander.
Right.
Now, of course, when he was chief, no wasn't going to do that. Our department was too big for that. But
So
I still kept my hands in it and oversaw it a lot. Came out and helped when needed. But I think I just was there to give them the tools they needed to enhance their own
right. And I'm
capabilities.
sure I'm sure long term that was much appreciated because it's hard to find senior leadership that still has that buy-in for the dogs, for the handlers. and make sure that that operation is good because I mean, it can make or break a K9 unit for sure. And
Oh yeah.
I'm sure they're very thankful. Um, so once you, and Jeffersonville PD, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've seen them quite a few times on live PD.
They were on live PD a lot. I guess the
Yeah.
most famous person on live PD was Denver Leverett and his
Yeah.
K9.
Yeah.
He was on there quite a bit. He actually got to go to the studio in New York and was
Yep. Yep.
on the TV there while they were filming live PD. And my son actually, Rick the third, he was on live PD several times. But they were there probably 6 months or to
Yeah.
a year.
Well,
And
I definitely want to circle back to that because I want to talk about your family legacy in K9, which is pretty unique. But I'm gonna fast forward just a little bit. Now, I want to bring this up before I move over to 2009, but that's when you first started having involvement with Napwater, right? While you were with that police department. That's
right.
when you were a member and you worked yourself all the way up to when I met you for the first time. You got elected as the president while we were overseas in Afghanistan, working with the British, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I joined NAPWA in 1982. That's when I got my very first dog. I became a
Yeah,
member, certified my first dog. I became a trainer. I worked toward trainer, became a accredited trainer in 1990.
yeah,
And in 1995, I became a master trainer.
yeah.
Been a master trainer now 30 years. Was elected president. Man, I'm thinking 2010, 2011, maybe, which is the time we were in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I remember sitting on a cot and
Yeah.
you came out like, hey, I'm the new president of Napwater. So it was really interesting. But that's not the first time I met you. So I want to talk about K2 solutions a little bit. And that was definitely a unique opportunity, right? Something
Absolutely.
different. So tell me, how'd you get picked up to go work at K2?
Well, I was getting ready to retire from the police department. I was pushing my 30-year mark, one department, 30 years. I'd basically done all I needed to do, wanted to do there at the department. And one of the other things I was thinking about was my son was on the department and he was trying to, make his name there.
Right.
But a
Uh-oh.
lot of things that he would do or want to do, they say, "Oh, your dad has done that, or your dad used to do that,"
Right.
And I felt like, I was in his way and I'd already spent almost 30 years there.
Yeah.
So, I made that decision to step down as chief, to have him hired. And then once I was back on the street as a major, shift commander, a real good friend of mine, you know him well, Shelly Gutierrez.
Yes.
He was working for K2 at the time, and he kept asking me, "Hey, man, when are you going to retire? I want you to come to work in North Carolina."
Right.
I said, "Oh, man, I'm going to sometime. I don't know for sure, but I think it's going to be the spring, of '09. That's what I'm looking at. But I don't know for sure." And he kept calling me, man. He put this way, my brother was very persistent.
Yes.
He stayed on me, man. Like you know what?
Yeah.
Well, one day he called me back up and said, "Hey, Rick, um, when are you going to retire?" And I said, "Brother, I've already put my retirement in. My retirement date is going to be the end of March of '09."
Right.
And he was like, "Thank God. Do you want to come to K2?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know." At that time, I had my own business here in southern Indiana,
I remember
which
that.
me and my wife was running my boarding, grooming, and training kennel.
Yeah.
Had one of the biggest kennels in southern Indiana. And I'm like, "Well, I still got that going on." And, but, yeah, very possible. Then he said, "Well, Lane Kelson, who you know very well, the owner, he came to the Nationals in '09 and he wanted to see what Napwater was about. And he met me. That's where I met him and I think it was June of '09.
Right.
I went out to Sturgis with a good friend of mine who's now the president of Napwater, Rob Hickman.
Yeah.
And I went out to Sturgis, and then we were going on to the west to do a Montana Napwater State workshop.
Right.
While out there, I got a phone call from K2, and they wanted to know if I wanted to go out and do some work with the Dev Group there in Virginia.
Right.
And they said they were looking for a trainer. And that was the first position that came open. Well, I interviewed for it, and long story short, they gave it to a guy that lived in Virginia who'd been helping them already.
Right.
I'd had to relocate, and I couldn't make it right away, so they ended up giving it to that guy, and he was there for a long time afterwards.
Yeah.
Very good guy for the position. They picked, I think, the better guy because
Yeah.
but he lived there. So and they said, "Hey, man, okay, we'll keep you, in the chute in case something pops up." in the near future. I said, okay, man. I said, no hurry. I'm out here in Sturgis having a good time. And I said, I got my business back home. So just give me a call whenever.
Yep.
Joe, I tell you, brother, it couldn't have been 2 days later. Same number pops up. I answer it. Rick, we have another job. Come up. I went, what's that? The IDD program that
Yep.
we all were involved in.
Yeah.
He said, we just won the contract.
Yeah.
And he said, we need trainers and we need them now.
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay. And he said, you've been highly recommended by Shelly Gutierrez to come. And we've already interviewed you for the other positions. So we don't need to re-interview you. If
Right.
you want the job, you can have it.
Right.
I said, okay. He said, well, we'll send you the paper. So I told my wife, Amy, I said, hey, man, I got a job at K2.
Yeah.
And she said, I thought they didn't need you. I said, oh, this is another job that popped up, a
Right.
new job.
Right.
Well, on the way home, Lane Kelson calls me. I'm pulling into Indiana, not too far from my house. I see a number. I know the area code. I answered. He said, Rick, this is Lane Kelson, owner of K2. Yes, sir. He said, congratulations on, coming out to join us on our team. He said, but when can you start? I said, no, I don't know. I said, when do you need me to start? He said, what could you, this was on like a Thursday.
Yeah.
He said, can you start Monday? I went, oh, no way. I said, I've been in Montana for 2 weeks. I'm just
Right.
coming. I hadn't got in the door yet. I said, man, there's things I'd have to get prepared.
Right.
He said, well, could you do it the next Monday? And I said, hold on one second. I said, my wife's coming out to greet me now because
Right.
I hadn't seen her in almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I told her I'm on the phone with Lane. And I say, hey, he wants to know if I can come. He wanted me to come this Monday. She said, well, no. I said, no, I know. I told him. I said, what about the next Monday? She said, yeah, we can do that. So I go back, take Lane off of mute. And I said, yes, sir. I said, I can be there a week from Monday. He
Yeah.
said, okay, Rick, I'll send you the paperwork and your travel allowance. And he said, we'll give you some hotels you can stay at and looking forward to have you on the team. So that's how I joined K2 in August of '09.
Yeah. And so for those of you that may not know, the IDD program was the Marine Improvised Explosive Detector Dog, right? So that program was really huge program. Uh, Saved a lot of lives, 100% saved a lot of lives. And Rick and I were both part of that program for a long time. So you get out over to K2 and probably much like me, a little bit of a culture shock because, we had come from law enforcement, military detection background, and now we're being merged in with these retriever and field trial hunt test trainers. And it was a very interesting time because you had two cultures almost clashing together to try to build something. And, you know, I would say on my part, knowing that I know detection very well, know that I understand how explosives work very well, and then trying to pair up with someone on the field trial world, it was a little difficult, to be honest.
Absolutely. We had our trying times.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that first contract, you were on that first contract with me. And I remember the day I hired into K2, there was a conflict of interest because I've been working for the Marine Corps. That's how I got my job out there at K2. I was assessing the first couple classes, and one of the classes was still on board. So I had to wait. It was like a week. So he put me over with Rick and Shelly, and man, they almost killed me. We were doing bike work in I think it was an old junk car lot.
Oh yeah.
And I said, man, if I have to pull one more dog on this bite suit and take one more hit, and I'm sure y'all were just getting a good kick out of that. Like, but yeah, so I did that for not long, maybe a week with you guys, and then I went over. But we kind of not split paths at that point. I know we were still having communications. As we were working on that first contract, there was a lot of things. We were in an outdoor made up kennel. It
Oh yeah.
wasn't no office spaces or anything like that. We had really great kennel staff that took care of those dogs. I think her name was Miss Bonnie Lynch, right?
Yeah, Bonnie Lynch.
Bonnie did a really great job of making sure those dogs were taken care of. Um, so once we get dogs through, we send folks on a couple deployments, and then it comes back around. We get a class with the Brits, right? The British, and I think that's when we started working together a little bit. So what tell me about that course, Rick, about the British version of the American IDD program.
Yeah, that what had happened was the Brits were over there, of course, in Afghanistan as an ally,
Yeah.
and they were seeing the Marines work with their IDD dogs.
Yeah.
and the capabilities that they saw, and they saw these K2 dogs, and they're like, man, these dogs are phenomenal. Now the Brits have a similar program, that specialized
AS.
search dog
Hmm.
and the arms explosive dog. They have one that are similar that
Yeah.
they do some directional stuff, but man, they fell in love with these IDD dogs, so they end up getting with K2 and the Marine Corps, and ended up, I think they bought 12 to begin with, and
Yeah.
I got put on with the British and with them teams to go over to, I went to Afghanistan with them. And basically, they had a pretty good kennel set up, and I worked with some very, very great people over there. Eddie Kingsland was the
Yep.
kennel master for them. That's who I worked with hand in hand a lot. And they had some great vet techs over there, and worked in with them. But I sit there. My job, of course, was working with the Brits. You were on the leatherneck side, and I was on the bastion side. Which, if people have never been to Afghanistan or never had the opportunity to go to the Marine base of
Right.
leatherneck, the only thing that separated the bastion base from the Marine base was a sand road.
Yeah.
And it
And
was just
And if you remember that first class, me and Bobby Lang were attached to you, as we worked the Brits through their workup, right? Which was also a little bit challenging with some of their senior leadership. The handlers were great, but yeah, I don't remember how long we spent over there, maybe 6 weeks, and then I transitioned over to Leatherneck as the program manager in country for all of them. But I remember, multiple times. Working with you and those guys throughout. What a great bunch of group of guys, the British dog handlers. What
oh
did they
yeah,
call themselves? They had a special name there.
oh yeah. I can see because on their picture, I'd have to think about it, but
Yeah,
they
I
did
had to
have a
think about
special
it
name
too.
they called themselves.
Yeah, it was like Bleak or Belk or something like that. But I remember we all had little patches. Mom was a Shaolin monk. I don't remember what you you and
Well,
Bobby
mine was I was called the sensei because
Sensei.
I was their teacher.
That's right. You were Sensei. I was Shaolin monk, and I don't remember what Bobby was, but I remember Pat was over there a little bit with us
Yeah,
too.
that they know.
I remember we put some miles in, man. And I remember you and I started a fitness journey over there together. And
Absolutely. You about killed me, but I made it.
yeah, if I tried to do it, you were probably my age when it happened. You were probably around 50 when we did that.
Yeah.
And I'm 50 now, and if I tried to do what you did, it'd kill me. But Rick and I ended up doing a half marathon, and that was a big milestone for both of us at that time. But so you do that deployment, you do a great job, man. You did a phenomenal job over there. It was real nice and easy to give you a compliment for that because those
Appreciate it, brother.
guys they were in the battle, right? We lost
Oh,
dogs, lost
absolutely.
handlers, but they had
Quite a
more.
few dogs. And
Yeah, but they had fines, they were out there doing the mission.
absolutely.
And it was one of the best deployments of my life. But when you circle back, or when you finish that deployment, you go back to K2, right?
Yes, sir.
And you stay at K2 for about another 3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years.
I came back in January of 12 and I stayed until the spring of 14. So at least another
Yeah,
two
for a
years.
couple
I was there
years.
12, 13, and going into 14 before I went on.
So I think when you got back is when they really started trying to plus up the MPC program, right? The basically the law enforcement side of the
Right.
program, the multi-purpose K9 program. And so I didn't see much after that because I'd be gone. I think I did another 9 month tour after that. But, for that, I'm sure with what was going on, very instrumental. Obviously, your background is great for it, right? You're the acting or you're the sitting president of Napwater at the time.
At the time I was, yes.
At that time, yeah, at that time. So just talk to me a little bit more about how your last year or so went at K2. And then where'd you go after that?
Well, I came back from Afghanistan in January of 12, I believe. What
Yeah.
matter of fact, if you recall, you actually asked me to stay on longer because whoever was coming there on the Bastion side couldn't make it right off the bat, and you asked me if I'd stay.
Right.
Which I then reported back to K2. I would stay if they needed me, but
Right.
that time can't think of the guy that was in charge of it. He said, "Man, we already got your plane tickets. We got everything ready for you to go. So we'll get somebody for Joe over there on Bastion or on Leatherneck." So I got back, and what destroyed me, and almost destroyed me for good, because my wife told me I thought she thought I was going crazy, because when I came back, I was over there for so long, I got vacation time.
Yeah.
So When I came back home, I had to come in and do my AARs and that kind of stuff, to let K2 what I'd done and what I recommend in the goods and bads.
Right.
And after I did that, that took me about 3 or 4 days. And then they said, okay, Rick, you're on vacation now. Well, they gave me like 6 weeks of vacation. And it was in January. Of course, it's not the warmest. So I can't take my convertible out. I can't ride a motorcycle.
Right.
And I mean, I'm like, I do go home and visit back in Indiana. So that took about a week. But then I got back and I had like 5 weeks left. And my wife caught me one time. We had a big island in the kitchen, if you remember. I
Yep.
started walking around the island in a circle one day, and she was back in the Carolina room. She yelled at me, "What in the name of God are you doing?" I said, "Honey, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know." I said, "Because I've been gone so long, every day was planned. I knew what I was going to do every single day. I'm
Right.
lost. I don't know what to do."
Right.
So Paul Bunker, who I know you had on your show here recently,
Yeah.
he was the program manager of the K9. And so I called him and said, "Man, Paul, is there any way I can come back to work early?" He said, "Well, yeah, mate, you can, but you're going to lose that vacation. You can't keep it."
Right.
I went, "Well, I lose it." But I said, "Man," I said, "Paul, I'm going nuts here today." And so long story short, I finally went back to work, but I hadn't been back to work for, I mean, it's maybe middle of February.
Yeah.
Jay Crafter
Yep.
was another Brit who came on to K2. They were looking for somebody to go out to 29 Palms in California
Mm.
because one of the trainers out there uh, abruptly quit and left and flew back home.
Right.
And it left them short. And they said, we need somebody to go over there in a hurry.
Right.
So Jay came out and asked a bunch of us in the big room. He says, "Hey, would anybody be willing to go to 29 Palms
Right.
like tomorrow and be
Right.
gone for 6 weeks?"
Yeah.
Well, everybody's looking around and nobody speaks up. And Jay said, "Well, if we don't have a volunteer," he said, "we'll just, volunteer somebody."
Right.
So I raised my hand and said, "Hey, Jay, give me 5 minutes and let me go get on the phone." Because you remember, we couldn't keep phones with us. We had to keep them
That's right.
out. You couldn't bring them into the area with you. So I
Right.
went out and got my phone, called, back home my wife and asked her, say, "Hey, I know I just got back home from Afghanistan, but they want somebody to go to California for 6 weeks. No one wants to volunteer. I'll volunteer, but what do you think?" She said, "Well, you always said you wanted to go out there and train at 29 pounds. See
Yeah.
what it's like." She said, "Why don't you go?"
Yeah.
Okay. I said, "They want me to go like the next 2 days."
Yeah.
She said, "Well, okay." So I went back into the meeting. I said, "I'm good to go."
Right.
And that's when he said, "Well, could you leave tomorrow morning?" I said, "No, give me at least 2 days so I
Right.
get my stuff packed." I said, "Damn, Jay, it's just in the afternoon now." I said, "I got to get shit packed for 6 weeks."
Right.
So the team was already out there. So I met them and went out there for 6 weeks. So then I got back. I was in the MPC side doing Shelly and I doing a lot of work. And so we were trying to build that part up for K2.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, when they started downsizing the IDD program, they decided to literally pull it out and just stop it completely when getting toward the end of the war. They had me write the IDD 2.0 literature.
Okay.
They said just in case for the detection side of it. So I sat there and in the little environmental uh, building that, if you remember, we had,
Yep.
sit there every day just writing the 2.0 IDD detection program,
Yep.
how we did it from day one to the very end. They wanted to keep that in case they ever decided to reopen up the IDD program. They would have all that stuff so they wouldn't have to go back there and do it. They already have exactly how we
Basically,
do
like
it.
a break in case of war manual. Yeah.
Yeah, in case it came out, they wanted, because they didn't want them to, put all that away and then no one have anything on it. And then something happens, they come out in something in the Middle East
Yeah.
again, they
Of
need the type of
course.
dog.
Yeah.
And then they don't have nobody that knows how to do it.
Right.
So I spent 2 months, I think, just writing that.
Jeez.
And that took me toward the end of 13, going into 14. And then, again, I mentioned his name earlier, who brought me to K2.
Yeah.
Billy Gutierrez had left K2 prior to me leaving.
Yeah.
And he was working with K9,
Yep.
brand new up and coming company that's kind of taken the K9 world by storm,
Yep.
really doing big things in the K9 industry. And Shelly said, "Hey, we need some trainers." And I've already told them about you. Would you like to come to K9? And I went to talk to, the vice president of K9 operations and
Yeah.
just didn't feel good about what was going to go happen in the future for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Not the company as a whole, but just where I was going to go.
yeah.
Because I kept trying to get back in the MPC side, and they kept wanting me to do the IDD 2.0 and run that side of it. And I said, that's not that's not where I want to be. I want to be in the law enforcement side of it
Yeah,
because
of course.
that's what I do.
That's your history. Yeah.
And they promoted somebody else to that position when it came open because I thought for sure, well, that's what they was going to put me in charge of. Put
Right.
somebody else in charge of it, and not that he wasn't qualified for it, but I knew I was, a whole lot more qualified to be in that position, and that's what they had promised me to begin with.
Right.
And but then I was told that, well, I'm sorry, that decision's been made. So it made my decision to leave a lot easier.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's when I left. I left there and went to IK9 there in Alabama,
Yeah.
and that's when my time that time from '09 to 14 was over, and I went to IK9 and spent about a year with them.
Yeah. And at some point was IK9 were they working with AMK9? Because I know you went
They
to
were,
AMK9.
I guess the way I understand it, they incorporated together.
Yeah.
They came together as IK9 and AMK9.
Okay.
And, um, so then they decided to keep the AMK9 name because they said it was already
It's
established.
already established name.
So they said, instead of trying to, build IK9 up, well, AMK9 was already established, a pretty big footprint in security in K9.
Yeah.
So they went from IK9, then we branded it as AMK9, and that's where they were until they were sold here in the last couple of years.
Right. And you for them, what did you end up doing for AMK9?
I was the lead instructor, and the guy, actually Shelly Gutierrez and myself, our job was not only instructing, which I was the lead instructor on any of the classes we held. I
Right.
put the classes, the POIs together, and we taught the classes. That
Right.
was my job. But also the job was we had the diplomatic security contracts
Okay.
for overseas for
Yep.
the embassies.
Yep.
And they were sending a lot of dog teams over. And Shelley and my job was to evaluate the teams and basically decide of all the ones coming through who was actually going to become handlers and be deployed overseas and who was going to be cut. And that was
Right.
our job.
Yeah. So basically, dog teams come in, they go through a course, and then a decision is made whether this dog team would make it in that environment or not make it in that environment.
Yeah, we evaluated dogs every week.
Yeah.
People in the HR department were the one hiring the handlers,
Yeah.
and they would send them into our classes, and then our job was to evaluate them every week. And we had green, yellow, red every week. So
Mhm.
person come through, you'd be evaluated, and we give you a green, good to go, for that week. Yellow ones means you need some more training, but
Yeah.
we red lines you means you weren't good to
Gotta
go, and
go.
basically then
Yeah.
we're sent back home.
Yeah. Time to go. Yeah, I get it.
And they told us what they were looking for. Hey, what kind of handler we're going to need? And these were explosive dog handlers, single purpose, of course, but they were explosive dog handlers. And our job was to make sure we picked the most qualified and competent handlers to be sent overseas to protect, our interest.
Yes. Hey, Rick,
So,
I'm gonna pause you right there. This thing is gonna cut off in about a minute, but we're gonna pick it up at overseas. I'm gonna send you another invite
okay,
and we'll jump back on. Go take a piss, do whatever you need to do. We'll jump
okay,
back on in a minute. Thanks, brother.
okay, brother.
We're back. Yeah. It's gonna come to your email, okay? That train it too.
I
Yep.
got you, brother.